Now, I have five big stories for you today, but I'm going to start with Lavrov because he said four sentences. He's a remarkably efficient uh, purveyor of misinformation. In four sentences, he conveyed four lies. I'm going to unpack these and then we'll talk about the other four stories beyond that. If you don't know me, my name is Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to provide context in the war in Ukraine. Okay, here we are with Lavrov. He's a foreign minister from Russia, and he said this: for the first time in history, Russia is fighting alone against the entire West. In World War I and World War II, we had allies. Now we have no allies on the battlefield. That means we must rely solely on ourselves. Okay, well, let's mark up this paper and see what we have. For the first time in history, Russia is fighting alone against the entire West. Is that true? Like, is that even does that even seem plausible to you? That's not what's going on. They're not fighting the entire West. That's part one. They're not like, okay, NATO is supplying things. I get that. But if it was on between NATO and Russia, this wouldn't look like this at all. Okay. In World War I and World War II, and by the way, they're not alone here either. They're saying alone? Like, you have allies here. In World War I and World War II, we had allies. What he doesn't say is that you switch sides because you were allied with Germany at first, and then you switch sides when you were double crossed. So that's a half truth. And then now we have no allies on the battlefield. What happened to the North Koreans? Like, you're conveniently forgetting that? There's another lie. And that means we must rely solely on ourselves. And you forgot about China, that's providing all kinds of goods to you. And you also forgot about the North Koreans that are providing goods to you, the Iranians that are providing goods to you. I mean, it's just like one thing after another, but good grief. Okay. It reminded me of this guy that's trying to do this trick with his arm, and he's putting this, okay, I can't put this knife down in here, so I'm going to show you that, and here we're going to put the knife down, and oh, I'm slicing my arm. Oh, it's such a like a magic trick, right? And of course he's not actually slicing his arm, but he's showing it like he has, like his arm is half in the one side and half in the other, and but it's all smoke screen. It's smoke and mirrors, right? Okay. Here's Dmitry Peskov. Russia, telling the truth now, Russia must first fulfill the military objective of its full-scale invasion before renewing bilateral relations with Ukraine. Of course, that's all he wants to do, is take over a big swath of the country first before doing that. So he is actually saying truth as he sees it. Of course, that's not what Ukraine or the West should allow him, Russia, to be able to do. Here's Fico lying, kind of like Foreign Minister Lavrov was. Slovakia Prime Minister Robert Fico claims that the West made a huge mistake using Ukraine as a battering ram against Russia. Okay, let's start over. If you knew nothing about the Ukraine and Russia war, except like it just started, like it was at the very beginning, would you say that Ukraine or the West was using Ukraine as a battering ram against Russia? Or would you explain it like, so Russia invaded Ukraine, and if in your wildest imaginations you were still on the Russian side of the equation, you might even say NATO, by saying Ukraine could join, caused Russia to do, but no, the West isn't like that. First, that's a wrong interpretation, but the West is making a mistake using Ukraine as a battering ram against Russia. Like, what a perversion of the way that the world is actually working here. Okay, here's Alexander Dugin. He's not going to be much better. The West will be severely punished for what it is and what it was. Severely punished for what it is and what it was. What is it and what was it? The West is an error, a mistake, a heresy. Like, that's the way Dugin actually sees the world. It has lost its own tradition and obliges others to lose theirs under hard pressure. The West is imperialism and the Western imperialism is anti-imperial. Just listen to what he's saying. He's saying that imperialism is actually good. Not what the West is doing, but what Russia's doing as an empire, as an imperial empire, is actually good. And this is why Russia needs to lose to then not do this to the world ongoing, right? They like Germany was brought to its knees and then plays nice with the rest of the world now. Japan lost Second World War II and then now plays nice with the rest of the world. Not Russia. They're not doing that. Okay. Now, next big story. I was talking about this. Trump's Ukraine support is growing. I talked about this yesterday, and I know not all of you believe me. Just watch this. Look at the deal with Ursula von der Leyen with the EU. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. But here, look. First, before this, Dmitry Medvedev says Trump's playing the ultimatum game with Russia. 50 days, and he should remember two things. Russia isn't Israel or even Iran. Each new ultimatum is a threat and a step toward war, not between Russia and Iran, but with his own country. Don't go down the Sleepy Joe road. Okay, what is he upset about? So here, we're going to look back. So he makes this deal with Ursula von der Leyen, and then the last video was this, the breakup. Trump to Putin, we're done. Why? Trump said just today, yeah, it's not going to be 50 days. I think I'll do it in maybe 10 days. Okay. And the world is reacting. Here's Medvedev talking about it. Okay. Meanwhile, next big story, Russia launches its first direct commercial flight from Moscow to Pyongyang amid deepening alliance with North Korea. Remember, they had no allies? Yeah, they do, North Korea. Okay. The flight's timing coincides with North Korea's Victory Day commemorations as Kim Jong-un praised Russia's role in anti-imperialist struggle. Wait a minute. Are they imperialist or are they anti-imperialist? Because I can't seem to keep up. They're the wrong kind of imperialist. But yeah, so yeah, it's hard to keep up. I understand. If you're playing at home, I get it. Okay. Putin's new geopolitical victory. The first direct flight from Moscow lands in North Korea. Previously, the only way to reach Pyongyang was via Vladivostok or by train from some other city I can't pronounce. Now, it's also possible to fly directly from Moscow's Sheremetyevo Airport with Nordwind Airlines. Flights aboard a Boeing are scheduled once a month. How about that? The journey takes around 8 hours. North Korea is already hosting Russian children, so it's so-called camps, and it's now expecting friendly tourists too. I think this is a fool's errand if you're the Hermit Kingdom to allow Russians to come in, because the North Koreans are going to start going, hey, why are the Russians that much better off, and why do they look like they're well fed and we're not? That's a bad idea. But even worse. Mick Ryan made this observation. He's a major general from Australia. He was on in the bunker with Darth Putin. He said this the other day.
And it's one of those truisms. It's like countries that are doing well generally don't have to ask North Korea for help.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to that. All right. Next, this is the next big story, and I led into it already with Ursula von der Leyen. The overall feeling with the Trump deal with von der Leyen, the overall feeling, at least in the EU, is that the agreement is better than it could have been, but worse than it should have been. Okay, I can buy that. There will be a 15% tariff on all European goods imported into the U.S. What does that mean? It means that the Europeans will probably sell less to the United States with that tariff and will pay more. So when I want to buy that German chocolate, I'm actually the one that's losing because I'm having to pay more. They'll be losing some because they'll not be able to sell as much as well. So it's a terrible deal all the way around. The EU commits to purchase $750 billion worth of U.S. oil, gas, nuclear fuel, etc. over 3 years. That's probably a good deal because it's giving them a safety net below so that they can get off Russian energy. And a further $600 billion investment will be made by the EU into the U.S., including military equipment purchases. That's really good because much of that is going to Ukraine. EU will be able to replace Russian energy with U.S. energy. President von der Leyen said that the agreement was a good deal and would bring stability and predictability with it. Okay, so that's really the key right here. It's bringing predictability with it, and so the markets can now start to calm down. An important outcome of the deal is the end of uncertainty that made global markets more volatile. I think that's a fair understanding of it. Don Wilson posted this. Polite reminder, we used to have most favored nation trade status with the EU, where we charge each other about 1% tariffs on most goods. Now we'll be paying 15% more for European products. So so much for my dark chocolate, right? Now, I'm still going to buy the dark chocolate, but it's going to cost me more. And it doesn't go like, where's that 15% go? It goes to Washington. It's essentially a tax. And so it's a terrible deal in that sense. If you're an American looking at that, like, that's just costing us for buying that. Well, yes, you could buy Hershey's, you could buy American made. Well, just make the chocolate better and I'll buy that. But okay, that's where we are. Meanwhile, Orban is stirring the pot. Trump ate von der Leyen for breakfast. The Hungarian prime minister mocked the new US-EU trade deal. This isn't an agreement. This is Trump simply eating von der Leyen for breakfast. Orban said the commission has no capital, no army. Who's supposed to pay for implement all this? Yeah, okay. So I don't think Orban's got the message that Trump has actually shifted on Ukraine. And so he's still kind of following the hard Putin-esque kind of line. Okay, meanwhile, Ukrainian Naftogaz has signed its first gas purchase agreement with Sokar Energy Ukraine. This marks the first time Ukraine is importing Azerbaijani gas through the Trans-Balkan corridor. The test delivery follows the route Bulgaria to Romania to Ukrainian border. Remember how Azerbaijan is at odds? I talked about this all last week, at odds with Russia. So they're bypassing Russia to get the energy supplies that they don't otherwise have. And so they'll stay a lot warmer this winter, all other things being equal. Okay, now let's look at what's going on with Russia. Russia's military spending hits late Soviet levels, up to 20% of GDP. That's something. And they collapsed on the other side of that. Now, they were higher before that in the 50s, 60s, 70s. They were higher than in the late 90s. But yeah, comparable to that of the USSR under Brezhnev and Gorbachev, up to 1/5 of GDP they're spending on military. It's a sign of decay of massed as power. What a great line. A sign of decay, massed as power. The Soviet Union bankrupted itself trying to fund an arms race. We all know that what came next. Now Putin is repeating the same mistake, only faster and with fewer allies. None of you believe Lavrov, but that's not true. When a regime spends 1 out of every 5 rubles to keep the illusion of strength, it's already afraid. What a great line. The system survives by exporting fear abroad and suppressing dissent at home. Now, we know about the fear abroad, and that's what Lavrov was trying to export. Let's talk about the dissent at home. This is really interesting. This was reading the news. This is Steve Rosenberg of the BBC. We're going to listen to just 1 minute of this.
Russian MPs' appetite for banning things seems to be growing. Today, Komsomolskaya Pravda reports that in the State Duma, they want to introduce fines for discrediting Russian goods and services.
But why would you need to do that if the Russian goods and services are so dreamy, as you talk about? I mean, you talk about all the time that these are the best, these are great Russian products, but they're not.
This is the initiative of MP Nikolai Novichkov, who explains discreditation will be interpreted as public comments aimed at disparaging the strengths of Russian manufacturers compared to foreign competitors.
How about that? So if you made better products, it's kind of like the chocolate issue that I have here. I want the German chocolate. It's good stuff. If we just made better products domestically, I wouldn't have to worry about it. That's exactly where they are. And so they're going to suppress dissent at home and export fear abroad. So the question is, if Russia will fall apart again, but who will be brave enough to make sure that it happens for good? And when it does, that the Russians stop acting like this, because they're creating uncertainty throughout the world. Okay, meanwhile, we saw this. UK Defense Secretary says the UK and Australia are ready to fight together if China attacks Taiwan. Again, another cause of uncertainty in the world. I just talked about Japan's assessment of China as the greatest potential problem in the world. But the UK talking about supporting Australia if she gets a little antsy. Okay, so that's actually going on. Here's Mick Ryan again from In the Bunker with Darth Putin.
And then you go further north, the Philippines, another great friend of Australia, Japan, and Taiwan. And then, of course, just to the west of that is China and North Korea and Russia. And people tend to forget that in Europe, you've got to worry about one big problematic authoritarian. In the Pacific, we've got to worry about 3. China, North Korea, and Russia.
Yeah, that's a really good observation. So the U.S. has refocused to the Pacific theater because that could be the biggest problem in their doctrinal estimation. And so when you see things like U.S. may cut its military presence in Europe by up to 1/3, according to Politico, Washington is reviewing its global force deployment with its final report expected by September. A NATO official reportedly said on the number of U.S. troops in Europe, currently around 90,000 to 100,000, could be reduced by 30%. So you would be at 70,000 and 30,000 redeployed to the Pacific theater or home or rotated, whatever. There's a reason for that. And I think his reason, his understanding is profound, and we need to factor that in to the way that we think about things. Okay. Meanwhile, President Erdogan of Turkey is becoming a big player in the Middle East, in the region around the Black Sea. We believe that the Russian-Ukraine war, must now come to an end. I emphasize at every opportunity that we are ready to host a meeting at the leaders' level. Come on, Putin. Come on, Zelensky. We'll host it. Turkey's sincere wish is this: just as a negotiation table was set up in Istanbul, the peace table will also be established in Turkey in a not too distant future. So Erdogan is rising in stature as a peacemaker, and this is what Trump is trying to do in other places. It didn't work out so well with Ukraine and Russia. It seems like it worked out with Pakistan and India because it was a little thing, or with what's going on with Thailand and Cambodia, perhaps. But we'll see how this plays out over time. Speaking of which, here is ceasefire talks between Thailand and Cambodia begin in Malaysia. At the table are Thailand's acting prime minister and Cambodian prime minister, and U.S. representatives are also attending the meeting. And so, like, Trump wants to see himself as this peacemaker as well, and it's kind of a strange thing to see. Okay, we'll end with this, as I very often do with Darth Putin. My Navy loses a fleet of ships to a country without a Navy. My Air Force loses 40-plus bombers in a morning to a country without an Air Force. My Army controls less of Ukraine than it did 3 years ago. We insist Ukraine surrenders to us. Isn't that how they keep functioning, Peskov and Lavrov and whoever else? By the way, if you're not familiar with In the Bunker with Darth Putin, KGB, he's on YouTube. Just go to @InTheBunkerWithDarth and you'll be able to see it. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.